on the comet, and this comet returns to us every 33 years. So the debris from the comet that's left and it's from its tail, and the head is the Leonid meteor shower. So until December 2nd, but it peaks this weekend after midnight, about 50 to 100 per hour during its peak. And the full moon, the Beaver moon, rises tomorrow at 6:24 a.m., which is good news. It sets right around sunset, so it should be a pretty picture out there. So the moon will not impact the viewing of the Leonids this weekend. This weekend will be a little drier, rather continue dry, but a little milder. It'll be in the 60s for high temperatures. Overnight low is not as cold either. Stays mild next week, and next Thursday, Friday is the next chance of rain. And that's because of a big dip in the jet stream here out over the west. Could create some stormy weather over the plains, and some of that could get ejected towards New England by Thursday or Friday. So that's something to hope for. This system to our west here, it is not going to come in. As you see on the map, we got low pressure with a lot of rain and some fronts, and it slides to the south of us. So we stay dry here. Sunshine and then some clouds tomorrow. And then this ocean system is going to back up and kind of spin around over the Canadian Maritimes. That's really not going to bother us either. It will actually increase our wind, because the difference in air pressure from that and the high pressure off to the west will increase our northerly wind flow. So after the cold start today, we do make it only to about 50 degrees for the afternoon high. That's all we can squeeze out, even with the sunshine today. And we're going with sun to clouds tomorrow. Highs inland 60, and at the shoreline about the same there. Hills a little bit cooler. And the 7-day forecast shows 63 Saturday, 64 Sunday, 61 Monday. We continue with the mild trend, as I mentioned, into next week. But it stays dry for the next several days. All right, traffic time. Simply standing by.
Alrighty, thank you, Nick. Quick look at our drive times on 91 here. Hey, no delays. It's been a pretty smooth commute so far. If you're heading from Cromwell to New Haven on the southbound side of 91, you should get there in just under 30 minutes. And for you folks heading from Rocky Hill up here to the capital city on the northbound side, that commute should take you about 7 minutes as speeds are moving around 68 miles per hour. Your next update coming up at 6.
A Hartford High School transformed into a courtroom for a unique lesson in law.
Yeah, but what students experienced was more than just a learning moment. It was an active case being heard in real time.
Fox 61's Richard Buorlo shows us what unfolded yesterday at Classical Magnet School.
More than 100 students sat in at Classical Magnet School for a real criminal case being heard by the Connecticut Court of Appeals. It's part of a One Circuit program, giving young minds an inside look at the legal process. A first-of-its-kind opportunity for a high school in Hartford.
The Connecticut Appellate Court hit the road Wednesday to hear oral arguments on a case presented before a younger-than-usual audience.
I've never seen a live trial before.
Kiara Hill is a junior at Classical Magnet School in Hartford. She's one of 125 students getting a front-row seat at the legal process at work.
I'm hoping to just kind of better understand how our world works and how the law kind of affects everyday life. And it's something that I feel like as people my age are becoming adults is something that we should need to know about.
The juniors and seniors are listening in on a real case working its way through the Connecticut legal system. The state of Connecticut versus Nicholas Marciano. At the center of the case is the question of unlawful seizure by police, a topic that resonates with many of the students in the room.
I feel like there's a lot of marginalized kids and people who are judged just based on their appearance. So I think it's an important topic for everyone to know, so that way they know their rights and are able to handle the situation properly.
I think it's important to explore, especially in light of police brutality in America and especially in Hartford, because we are a diverse community.
The unique learning moment is part of Connecticut's on-circuit program, where the state Supreme Court and Appellate Court visit high schools, colleges, and law schools to show students how the justice system operates. Wednesday, Classical Magnet became the first Hartford school to host the court.
I was always a kid who was excited to do jury duty when I get older, so I think this is a really cool experience, especially from being in an actual appellate courthouse, having it here.
Teaching students not only to be book smart, but also street smart, as they shoot for success after high school.
I'm really grateful. I know this is not something that every kid in the district or in the state is being offered, but I feel like it's a very important opportunity for people to have.
Classical Magnet School stated mission is to help all students succeed in school and in life, and this is one of the ways they prepare young adults for the real world. Students also got to ask questions to attorneys after the hearing as well, which I'm told both the students and the teachers very much enjoyed. In studio, I'm Bridget Fiorlo, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
All right, that's really awesome that those kids had an opportunity to experience that.
Yes, the leaders of tomorrow. Good stuff. Here's what's ahead right after the break.
It's being touted as the nation's first ever Christmas movie trail, and it's here in our state. I'm Kayla Kate. Coming up, I'll tell you what you can expect from this adventure and what some community members have to say about it.
The NFL, Sunday on Fox. Check for the game in your area.
The Connecticut International Auto Show returns to Mohegan Sun November 15th through the 17th. Go to fox61.com for your chance to win a pair of tickets. One-stop fun at the Connecticut Auto Show at Mohegan Sun. Don't miss out on the ultimate Black Friday celebration at SK Lavery. Our unbeatable Black Friday prices are here the entire month of November across all our locations, just in time for the holidays. Seize the opportunity to snag incredible deals and limited time inventory. Hurry, these offers won't last. Don't miss out this holiday season. Upgrade your home with SK Lavery's Black Friday sale today.
Cozy nights, cannonballs, bubble baths, backup plans. For all the ways you use propane, go with Petro. Our full range of propane services means reliable delivery with no hidden surcharge fees, expert installation and maintenance, and 24/7 live service and support. Go with your local propane pros. Go with Petro. Call today.
I'm a caregiver for Hartford Healthcare Independence at Home. Independence at Home can provide care hourly or a live-in caregiver. We assist clients getting ready for the day, getting dressed, taking them shopping, appointment, meal preparation, medication, any activities that they need to really come in addition to the family. I feel like I'm making a difference in their life.
Worried about leaking when you want to be laughing? It's time to upgrade. Only Always Discreet has a unique dry tech layer to keep you drier than depend, so you can laugh harder and stay drier. We've got you. Always Discreet.
We're done.
What about these?
What's right? Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty absorbs spills like a sponge and is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less. Bounty, the quicker picker-upper. Want to share your stories on Fox 61 Student News?
Esports teams train weekly to keep up with the competitive.
Ninja Warrior was a place that I felt like I could fit in.
Learn how at fox61.com/student news. Sponsored by the Hartford Wolfpack, your local Connecticut hockey team.
Rescue 126 coming in hot.
Are you ready?
Welcome to the party, Captain. We're gonna need every rescue unit they can spare.
Big waves, big currents, big everything.
I'm going in.
That's all in a day's work. Be safe, Captain.
911 Lone Star, followed by an all-new rescue high surf Mondays at 8 on Fox.
Already with the holidays almost here, a Christmas movie is just one of the ways to get into the holiday spirit.
It sure is. Many of those movies at Hallmark or Netflix were filmed right here in Connecticut. That's why the state launched a new Christmas movie trail. It shows more than 20 locations where those films are shot across our state. Fox 61's Kayla Kane checks it out from Wethersfield.
The holiday season is approaching fast, and Connecticut has been home to holiday cheer and movies all about Christmas. So in Wethersfield, at the site of one of those Christmas films, the state unveiled what's being touted as the Christmas Movie Trail, the first of its kind in all of the country.
I think it's really neat that they incorporated some local folks like us to show up, and a grandma, and to just share it with people that really have lived in Connecticut.
It was a magical day for Joanne Palumbo, Beth Burke, and her mom, who spent their day at the house where the Hallmark movie Christmas on Honeysuckle Lane was filmed in Wethersfield.
And it's like totally a lot of fun, and I love it because I love Christmas and so cute. My mom finds happiness and joy in watching this, and she lost her husband a few years ago, and she doesn't want to watch anything other than Hallmark to keep her happy in her last chapter.
They won a contest to be one of the first people to see the launch of Connecticut's Christmas movie trail.
I think it's awesome because you can stop at the different places that they actually film, like either a restaurant or the town, and just check it all out.
It was an early holiday treat, complete with caroling, pictures with 3 Hallmark Christmas movie actors.
I was happy to experience this because I got pictures with my mom with these super hot guys, and that's going to be her Christmas card.
And the first look at the map of the movie trail, which features 22 different locations in Connecticut for residents and visitors to go to.
And one of the locations for me to visit would be down by where I live on the shore, was one of the first places. But I love to travel across the state of Connecticut.
Film director Andrew Barnard has shot several holiday movies in Connecticut and says he will continue to do so.
Yeah, I just want to bring more and more here to bring work, to bring notoriety. These movies have created 2,000 jobs across various sectors as well.
Many film production companies come to shoot in Connecticut because of the tax incentives the state offers. However, there is a proposed bill that could eliminate the film production tax credit. Some state leaders, including Governor Lamont, hope to keep things as is and strike down that bill.
It's essential, in fact, if you do not have the ability to deliver a tax incentive in your budget, it's highly unlikely that your film will get produced, and that would affect our competitiveness if we were not able to offer tax incentives. This industry is an important industry, one that we are happy to have, one that we are encouraging, one that we are building, and one that we hope that you will continue to patronize in the movie theaters as well as on your television screen.
You can start the Christmas movie trail now. There's a map with 22 filming locations throughout Connecticut that you can check out on our website, fox61.com. In Wethersfield, Kayla Cade, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
That looks like a cool thing to check out, right? And as we wrap up this hour, congratulations to all the folks behind the reopening of the Hartford Public Library. We're so excited that this is back, right?
I have a feeling both of us will be down there sometime next week.
There's a great spot that families can enjoy in the city, another great part of our capital city.
All right, that wraps up the 5 o'clock hour this morning. If you're heading out the door, make it a great one. But we have Tim and Erica in right now to give us a preview of what's ahead at 6. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, a lot more ahead here. A special education teacher caught it quiz. That's after a video of her speaking out on social media. It went viral. We'll get you the latest.
Hey, we're 2 weeks away now from the Manchester Road Race as of today. So if you're set to watch or run and you don't want to drive to downtown, there is another option. We'll tell you all about it.
And a proposal to build a new soccer stadium in Massachusetts now one step closer to reality. We'll have the latest on the New Revolution.
Manchester Road Race tradition continues this Thanksgiving morning. Watch live or streaming on demand on Fox 61 and Fox 61 Plus. Live coverage starting at 9 a.m. Sponsored by Root Center for Advanced Recovery. Learn more about our new locations and job opportunities online.
Do you want to make junk disappear? We know where it is. 1-800-GOT-JUNK is full-service junk removal. I've got a partner who lives down the street from you, and we're anxious to come to your rescue. All you have to do is point. Call 1-800-GOT-JUNK.
Save hundreds on top brands during the Black Friday mattress sale at Rainbow and Flanagan. Take up to $600 off Beauty Rest Black and Smart Life. Up to $500 off Purple and Tempur-Pedic. Up to $400 off Sleep and more. Or finance your mattress for as little as $50 a month with no interest for 72 months. We deliver your new mattress the next day and take away your old mattress for free. Don't wait. The Black Friday mattress sale is on now at Rainbow and Flanagan.
A moment with Ernie Bob Jr. and his family.
What just happened? The Great Pyramid.
Machu Picchu?
Whoa.
Everywhere is home when you're with your family.
grade. Now at National Forest Direct, you can get an entire room of laminate flooring installed the next day for just $555 and no interest for 1 year. Call 888-400-FLOOR. We'll bring the store to your door. Now at 6, a special education teacher here in Cheshire has resigned over comments that she made in a video that went viral. I'm Kayla Collins with the latest.
A calm conclusion to a scary situation. A suspect standoff. I'm at Florida reporting in East Hartford. Hear from residents, see the surveillance video, and learn what led up to that encounter.
After months of back and forth between attorneys about the contempt charge against Michelle Troconis, no resolution. So now the case is going to trial. I'm Julia LeBlanc, and we'll give you the details coming up.
All morning. This is Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
Good morning, Abby.
And I'm Tim Lammers. It is a cold start to the day out there. You're going to want to grab your jacket before you head out the door. That being said, at least as we get over to Rachel Scacelli here, there was no wind when I was walking outside, and that really made all the difference. It was not bad. So.
Absolutely, yeah. With the lighter wind that's expected today, it is going to make all the difference in terms of what it feels like outside. However, it is colder. I mean, it is colder in some spots than this time yesterday. So here's what it looks like over in Hartford right now. We have those mainly clear skies out there this morning. Temperatures have fallen off to below freezing in spots. We do have some scattered upper 20s and even some lower 20s out there now with low humidity too, which makes things incredibly dry. Right now out of the north around 6 miles per hour. It's 23 in Winstead, 22 in Thomaston this morning. It's 26 in Meriden, 25 in Middletown. The lower 30s from New Haven into Brantford now. We're dressing for about 23 degrees in Willimantic, so in northeastern Connecticut it is cooler. Plan for sunshine today. Towards the afternoon, there may be a few more clouds that start to build in. There is an approaching front that comes close to our area, but unfortunately we just don't get the rain from it, but we will get some clouds with temperatures today that will be in the upper 50s to right around, or rather upper 40s to right around 50 degrees. So 49 in Milford, 51 degrees in Hartford, and southeastern Connecticut, we're in the upper 50s as well. Today will be a cool day, but as we approach the end of our work week and into this upcoming weekend, we do have mild conditions that start to build in. So for our Friday, it's around 60 degrees, 63 for Saturday. More details on the weekend forecast coming up in just a bit. 6:02, let's go check on the road for Morning Symphony. Hey, good morning to you, and good morning to you, Sunshine. If you're just waking up and joining us this morning, let's get you up to speed with what's happening outside on the roads this morning. Some construction projects are wrapping up as we are in the 6 o'clock hour. Here's a live look over at the this morning, comfortable, not too bad at this point in the morning. And let's wrap it up with our Hartford drive times. No delays to report yet. 91 heading down to 84, looking good. And your commute along the eastbound side of 84 heading toward the Hartford Tunnel this morning should take you about 5 minutes coming from Newbury now. We'll have you guys updated in just about 15 minutes or so. Tim, Erica. Special education teacher in Cheshire has resigned after a video she meant to keep private went viral on social media.
Yeah, that video appears to show her making threats and politically charged remarks. Fox 61's Katie Collins is live now outside of Chapman Elementary School where that teacher worked. She's got the latest. Katie, good morning.
Tim, Erica, good morning to you both. That teacher in Dunmuddy offered her resignation effective immediately just last night. The resignation comes after a video that she shared on Snapchat, meant to be a private video sent in a group chat, was recorded by somebody else and then uploaded to social media. That video quickly went viral, gaining even national attention on social media platforms. You might have even seen the video yourself, but at this time, Fox 61 has not been able to independently authenticate it or see where it originated from. Now, the teacher was placed on leave earlier this week while the school district began an investigation. Concerned parents from Cheshire and Indiana for that teacher to be removed from her position and criticized the district's original response to the video.
My grandson will be coming here next year to be in that teacher's district. I did not hand him off. She was there. I did not unsee that video. I don't want to judge her. They have a responsibility in this town to notify us of things like this, but I would not hand any relative off to her.
Now, in a statement, Cheshire Superintendent Dr. Jeff Solon wrote in part, quote, "The comments on that video did not reflect the position condition of our school system. They were hurtful, deeply concerning, and ultimately undermined the faith that our community has placed in us. As a leader of this school system, I feel terrible for the angst that this has caused our community, and I look forward to returning our focus on the great work that our educators perform every day. Again, that video did appear when it see the teacher using obscenities and make politically charged remarks towards those who voted for Donald Trump. At this time, we're still working to confirm whether or not the Cheshire Police Department is still investigating this incident and whether or not Dunleavy will be facing any charges. Reporting live in Cheshire this morning, Kaylee Collins, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
Kaylee, thank you for that report. We appreciate it.
6:05 now, some tense hours in one East Hartford neighborhood as police tried to convince a shooting suspect to come out of a home that they had surrounded.
Now, Fox 61's Matt Karras talked to neighbors yesterday about the ordeal, and he filed this report with us. This all started Tuesday night. A man claimed his car was shot at in Bloomfield. Police quickly identified a suspect and then located that suspect at about 10:30 this morning in Bloomfield. But the man quickly fled to East Hartford. He's been identified as 24-year-old Antoine Daniels of Middletown.
So I stepped out and that's where I find myself.
People living in the Adams Street neighborhood of East Hartford stepped outside Wednesday morning to find law enforcement on their doorstep.
I just try to bring my coworker to work, and we were like, somebody's on the loose. We just need to be careful of extra precautions.
Police from East Hartford, West Hartford, Bloomfield, and Vernon converged on this blue house around the corner where a suspect wanted in connection to a domestic dispute was believed to be hiding.
I missed it because I was sleeping.
The Speed New Coatnews lives right next door. When he woke up and peeked outside, police promptly escorted him to the safety of a cruiser.
I just asked what happened. I didn't know how I said somebody get in, and the people who moved in, they actually called for the inspector, police.
Fox 61 cameras captured the entire standoff as police set up a perimeter. They brought in canine dogs and armed themselves with long guns and tactical gear. Calling out to the suspect, 24-year-old Antoine Daniels of Middletown, with a loudspeaker. Fox 61 obtained surveillance video that shows Daniels first speaking to the homeowner in his driveway before entering the home, where he stayed barricaded for more than an hour.
Just do the right thing. It's not worth it. If you're in there, get out. Get out, man. Give yourself up.
And ultimately, that's exactly what happened. Daniels came out through a side door with his hands up. Police approached with caution and made the arrest without incident. A calm conclusion to a scary situation.
At this point, the suspect that we were looking for, we have in custody, and right now we're just clearing two houses right over here, just to be safe.
Daniels is facing charges of reckless driving and interfering with police, but that is only from Bloomfield. He will likely face several more charges from other police departments related to the pursuit and standoff situation. Reporting in East Hartford, Matt Caron, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
Matt, thank you. Michelle Troconis was back in a courtroom yesterday, 8 months after a jury found her guilty of conspiracy to commit murder.
This time, let's hearing on a charge that was added during her trial. Fox 61's Julia LeBlanc is in the courtroom and has more. After months of court dates and closed-door conversations between the attorneys, they haven't been able to reach a resolution on this contempt charge. So right now, Michelle Troconis is once again going to trial. This all comes after Troconis was sentenced to 14.5 years in prison for playing a role in the death of Jennifer Barbadulos. During that trial, prosecutors say Troconis intentionally displayed a sealed court document for the public to see. That document was related to the contentious divorce between Jennifer and her estranged husband, Curtis Dulos, who was also Troconis' boyfriend. The state has said that document was blown up in large font, but Frost argues it's not easily legible from a distance. And though the trial was being live-streamed by a TV News videographer, he says his client's laptop wasn't supposed to be shown on camera.
And because they happened to do something they weren't supposed to do, and somebody who is aligned with his family was upset about it, it then got elevated to a contempt
But the state says Strakonis both wrongfully had her hands on that document and wanted people to see it on her computer.
Each time it was reiterated by Judge Randolph on the record during trial that the report was to be remained sealed because it was discussed quite a bit during that lengthy trial.
And the trial date is set for March 11th, but the attorneys will meet again in January, where Frost hopes jury selection will be waived so that this case can go to a bench trial. We are in Stamford. Julia LeBlanc, Fox 61, Connecticut's news station.
All right, Julia, thank you. Republicans will keep control of the U.S. House of Representatives on January 3rd as they got the 218th seat that they needed when Arizona Congressman Juan Ciscomani won his re-election bid. Now, as for how big the Republicans' majority will be, that remains to be seen as there are 9 races that are still undecided. When President-elect Trump is sworn into office on January 20th, his party will be in control of Congress.
And the peaceful transition of power is already underway. President Biden invited President-elect Trump to the White House. They met in the Oval Office yesterday. Biden promised to make the transition as smooth as possible.
Thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's it's not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much.
Trump will be sworn in on January 20th.
Well, we've learned that more people got sick after eating quarter pounders at McDonald's, but coming up, we'll tell you why the CDC says you don't need to worry.
Grocery carts at one store have gotten smarter. How it's going to make shoppers' lives easier and even save them money.
Also, we want to remind you, the Hartford Wolfpack have their Hispanic Heritage Game coming up tomorrow night at the XL Center. You can meet Chief Meteorologist Rachel Frank there. The first 1,500 fans to show up at 6 p.m. will also get a scarf that celebrates 50 years of hockey in Hartford. We'll be right back.
We think about family, families in the communities where we live.
Holidays are here, so let's get glam. I got these products from Ultra Beauty at Target. We have the Morphe Crowd Laser Palette, Stila Stay All Day Waterproof Liquid Eyeliner, this MAC lipstick, and Ruby Wheel. Shop these products at Ultra Beauty at Target for $25 or less.
So Energy North started in 1981, and in 2015, Energy North acquired Hafner, which brought Energy North.
Hi, my name is Mark. Welcome to my theater. It's called Cinemark. It's the 11.7.6 So what inspired me to create this home theater was we purchased this house from a builder. It was new, had an unfinished basement. And I had theaters in open spaces before, living rooms, shared space. So the basement was a clean slate. And the way the basement was configured, this theater had like 3 concrete walls, and it was open, and it's like 2/3 of the basement, which is just ridiculous. But built it, finished the basement a couple years after we moved in, just to make sure that there was nothing wrong with the basement. Flooding or anything like that. Just always been into home theater since 1997. Like Hi-Fi VHS. Watching just like TV shows when I was on the Nordic track, you know, that kind of stuff. So I got my first projector in 2001. So how I feel when I sit down and watch a movie here is just joy. It's my space. My family also uses it, but not as much. Children, teenagers, friends. I just feel like I'm being transported to a different place. So, because everything's all black, you turn the lights off, all you see is the screen. For the content that really shows off the capabilities, I have a lot of things in my demo clips. What I look for is content that shines without having to apply basic to it. So Ready Player One is a really good clip. It has a lot of attributes that we always look at. Good Atmos, has good bass, good surrounds. So that's one. Wonder Woman, turning to the original one, 2017. The Battle in the Village, that has a lot of good bass transients. And the Gatling gun from that armored personnel carrier has a lot of really good tactile response. And then also Jumanji, the helicopter escaping in the helicopter scene, the first movie, that has some very good bass tactile response. It's a good demo also for the project. The most challenging part of designing this space is that there's a trunk line running through the center, and I didn't want to have the ceiling go up and down around the trunk line, so what I did is I used 2 by 12 foot spans along the length of the room, sitting on the walls of each end, and I did a straight ceiling. So the ceiling height that made it kind of low, it's 7 feet 9 inches. But it is a flat ceiling. They probably actually would have the HVAC to the sides of the room. But it is what it is. When I host movie nights, the atmosphere is that I want to create is that they'll feel like they're being transported to the story that's of the movie that we're watching without any distractions. So again, the room is totally blacked out. Screen, the image, I want everything to look great and sound great for a fantastic experience. How this home theater has impacted my family and personal life. So seriously, I never went to the movie theater until the children, well, I guess when they were younger, like when they became a certain age and they wanted to see something and didn't want to wait till it came out on disc, I was totally happy to wait. Sometimes they weren't. So I had to make some compromises there as they got older. And my two oldest, they're teenagers now. They enjoy coming in here and watching movies. So I'm happy to see that. What advice would I give to somebody considering building their own home theater is to do your research. And if you don't have the time to do your research, maybe pay somebody that is in the business of designing spaces. Because I did my research online, but I missed a lot of stuff. Mostly ABS form. I didn't do any sound isolation. And I figured, okay, when the kids are older, they're going to be down here watching movies with me. And that was true to a certain extent, but as they got older, they're not. Sound isolation is something that I should have done a better job at. So do your research thoroughly if you don't have time, and go to the right people. If you don't have time, pay somebody to design it for you. What this home theater represents to me, besides the space just to watch movies, is a place where I come to get away. I'll come down here and listen to music for a couple hours. It's really enjoyable to me. Like if I hear things on the radio, I listen to it, put them in Shazam, and I sometimes want to listen to it in the theater. Sometimes I'll add it to my playlist. It sounds good. It's just a space where I can get away from the world, from the stress of the city. When I watch a movie in a commercial theater now, I find the experience lacking compared to my home theater. With a large space in a commercial theater, it's hard to pressurize that much space for days. And that's one of the key aspects for me, is having enough low frequency response. Like I said, I've never been to one of those theaters where they have the tactile in the seats. There are theaters that are like more boutique, but I think we can eat dinner like the smaller the theater. But I've never been to those. So actually, when I was serving in Germany, they had smaller theaters where I saw the Matrix. Probably about the size of, I don't know, very small, right? And just a great experience because of smaller rooms and it can be,
chocolate, cacao, and honey in the morning. Let's go.
The picture is much larger in the commercial cinema, so I don't have that, but I still find it enjoyable. I don't feel like when I sit down to watch a movie, I don't feel like this room is too small. If I could go back in time, the advice I would give to myself is to take more time, do more research, and more time building the theater. I took off 3 weeks off work, and I wanted to get through I wanted to get the framing done in that time. And I made a few mistakes along the way, but that's life. My favorite thing about this theater, I would say, is the tactile. Both the near field and the hover ease chairs. I didn't have tactile a few years ago. I went to Jonathan's house in Kansas City. I was there in business. Spent 7.5 hours at his house running through done with this. And after I came away, I'm like,
Is he talking about base shakers?
So I started out with the near field, and then I had a Boss platform, which was good, but because they're open baffle, there's nothing to stop the driver. So then I went to Croson's. Those are also very good. They're very accurate, but they're also expensive. Then recently, this past year, I went to the Hoveries because my 2 outer chairs, I put Hoveries on those because I had the drivers left over from the Lost platform, and I had Croson's on the front 3 chairs. So then I had those 2 outer chairs, which I don't sit in very much, but when I did sit on them, I was like, wow, this is really impressive. And I didn't do, there were some compromises in the design of that Hoveries chair, and I knew that. And I was like, well, if I do it well, it can be a lot better, and so therefore I sold the Croson's and I went to the Hoveries. And outside of the
Hey everybody, welcome. kept me out of the picture. With Skyrizi, feel symptom relief at 4 weeks. Many people were in remission at 12 weeks, at 1 year, and even at 2 years.
Serious allergic reactions, increased infections, or lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, get checked for infections and TB. Tell your doctor about any flu-like symptoms of accidents. Liver problems leading to hospitalization may occur when treated for Crohn's.
Ask your gastroenterologist about Skyrizi.
Today we're reviewing this light-based 600 case by Be Quiet!
Nice.
Exclamation point. Period. Periods because it was the end of the sentence I was saying. So this case is pretty interesting because it can be presented in 3 different ways. So they have this intentional, flat, sort of traditional old-school desktop presentation. It can be stood up into standard by attaching these feet to it on one of the 2 sides, or they can be attached to what would be the traditional top of the case to turn it into an inverted solution. And so mechanically, this is kind of a brilliant but very simple design. This case is going up against some really heavy competition. So that's $150 to $195 depending on the SKU. This is one of the competitors. So that's the Montec K95 Pro. We have a lot of testing on that one. It has a mesh or glass front option. This is the Height Y70. Got this sort of chamfered front edge. That's the unique aspect there. And then this is the Antec C8, which is one of the more affordable dual chamber cases that's bottom intake focused. And then these are some of the other competing options in the market right now. So Lian Li has the whole O11 lineup. They've been making them for years at this point. And that is sort of, it's not the inventor of the idea of the dual chamber case. It's been around a long time. Corsair actually made a very popular one back in around 2013 or so, 2014 might have been, that I covered. And since then, it has kind of bloomed as this whole separate archetype in the industry, thanks to the O11D originally repopularizing it. Then go look at some older Be Quiet cases too, like this one. So Patrick and I have been reviewing Be Quiet cases since at least 2014. We've been doing this a long time. Heavy use of foams and dampers and things like that. I just read Patrick's note from possibly 1 year ago. Before that, this video is brought to you by Squarespace, and visiting squarespace.com/gamersnexus will give you 10% off your first purchase with them. We've built a number of our own websites with Squarespace, where we list catastrophic PC hardware failures to inform subscribers of those failures. We also built our store website with Squarespace using its built-in e-commerce tools, and of course we built a website for our CEO Snowflake because she demanded our audience know who really runs the show. Get to the core of your idea and spend less time on web design by signing up at squarespace.com/gamersnexus or click the link below. So there's 2 versions of this case. We didn't review the 900, but it's all the same stuff. It just scales up larger. It'll almost be a little different. Core concepts are the same. The features, more or less, are the same. There's actually a couple of exceptions there, and we'll talk about that briefly today. But we're focusing on the 600. And here's the thing with how these feet work. I'm going to throw them on just for the shoot, but there's 3 slots of feet, so you're only ever going to use 2. You're supposed to use the outer 2 here, but there's also this inner slot, which you shouldn't use if you're going to put it on this side, although it's still stable. That's just because these panels are symmetrical, top and bottom, so it allows Be Quiet to flip this panel to the other side, and then that becomes the outside. You think of it like flipping it inside out or something. And then the other one goes up here, but this should go down here if it's going to stand on this side of the case, whereas that one ends up redundant. So it's going to have one set of redundant feet that technically shouldn't be used like in this configuration, but we'll just go ahead and use these and show you how it ends up stable anyway. It's just that's a redundant set for if the panel flips because it's symmetrical. Is this plugged in? We're going to find out. Nope. So currently, if we spin around here, I put the feet on what would be the traditional top. So usually they're a little bit of play in them, which is something we're going to go over today in the fit and finish. But once it's stationary, it should more or less just stay put. So that's really how the core feature looks. Because this case is designed to be positioned 3 different ways, the thermal situation is pretty interesting. Currently, it just happens to be inverted. That puts the cooler closest to the intake at the bottom, if it is a bottom to top, and it also orients the GPU exhaust, so that's kind of blowing this way. Now, alternatively, if it's back the other way it was back there a second ago, what we end up with is a potential side-to-side. So you can do intake on either side, pull it through and do exhaust through the other side. We have a lot of thermal testing to do today for configuration. So This case again is up against a ton of competition. Some of the key ones include those we looked at a second ago, like Lian Li's 011 series. These days, this includes a lot of things. There's the Vision, there's the Evo series, there's the XL series, there are other variants. And this jump-started this entire trend. The Height Y60 and Y70 have come down in price. The Y70 non-touch is still more expensive than the Light-Base 600 though. The Y60 is cheaper than it. And that's the different take on the concept of the cut corner. That was picked up by NZXT. They have the H5, H7, and H9 cases. They vary in their similarities, but they share some concepts. Montec's King series cases, but especially the 95, have an affordable dual chamber option that competes with the light base. Then Antec C8 cases are relatively good performers thermally. So you get the idea. It's a crowded segment. At $150, it's more competitive. It's just that it's empty. There's no fans. At the $195 price, which is what this one is that we're reviewing, that includes the 4 120mm fans and all the LED and everything else. It's also got these. There's some hubs hidden. There's one right there. And then there's another one up top in there. So that kind of brings the cost of the case up. Externally, the case also has a giant light bar that wraps around the case. That's probably where the name comes from. This was done in this particular way so that Be Quiet could achieve the rotation without losing symmetry when you move the case around. In fact, all of this case had to be designed with that symmetry in mind. That's what gives the cheaper flexibility than the more mechanically intensive inversion processes from other cases. But it's also limiting in some areas. For the basics, our version includes 4 120mm fans pre-installed as side intake and rear exhaust when in traditional configuration. You could also shift these to the bottom as intake fans in traditional orientation, or if rotated flat, they could be used as a side-to-side flow path. This on its own is pretty interesting, and it's one of the tests we ran. Other small fit and finish issues include this panel gap between the glass front and side, which is large enough that you'd need a taxi if you had to get from one side to the other. The glass panels also diverge as they approach the bottom, with the bottom edge protruding slightly despite a relatively flush top edge. We've got a couple other fit and finish complaints later as well. But let's get into the big details. Now, in the past, we've criticized Be Quiet for its complicated case inversion processes. The Darkbase Pro 900, for example, took us 45 minutes to figure out initially, with disassembly and reassembly and sorting through the ridiculous variety of screws and amount of them and other hardware. Be Quiet, though, must have taken that criticism to heart, even if 7 years later, because the Light-Base 600 can be inverted in under 10 seconds with no real screws at all, just the case feet. Now, the design doc says 30 seconds, but that's with the system inside. The case feet are pulled off by rotating them about 90 degrees. They hook into a slot in a specific location in the panels. This solution isn't perfect because the feet don't lock and they go crooked. As soon as you slide the case around or set it down initially, you'll have to reposition them once it's in the final spot. They also feel fragile enough to damage by hand if positioned in the wrong spot to initially insert. The ease of use, though, outweighs the downsides, we think. It's just that the downsides were avoidable in design. Either way, once it's done, these concerns go away. This case also includes one of the simplest vertical GPU conversion systems that we've seen. You take out all the horizontal slot covers, screw a bar across the back of the case, and adjust the built-in GPU support down a couple of notches. The horizontal orientation is the most unique in the current era of computing, though it definitely used to be the standard. The old style is actually so liked in the retro scene that Silverstone made an April Fool's case that accidentally became popular enough that there's some real demand to get it made. Now, the downside is that the Light-Base 600 isn't a particularly small case. It's not huge by modern standards, but because it can be laid flat, it ends up with a 32 centimeter dimension this way, which actually, you know, I apologize. I said centimeters. There's a comment about 7.5 years ago that said, "You're American, why don't you use American units?" So, in other words, it is approximately 75% of 1 cubit wide. Or, is about 4 palm widths. Or, let me just, 0.001515 repeating furlongs. It's not petty if it's accurate. The 900 has even larger dimensions, so this might pose some challenges for that true desktop orientation. Backed against a wall, the case requires a minimum of 50 centimeters up to the front edge of the case, requiring a deeper table to comfortably accommodate a keyboard and a mouse if placed directly in front of the case. Now, you don't have to position it that way, but if that's what you want, you need to plan ahead and make sure the table's deep enough. The dimensions make it impractical to use for most tables in the old IBM PC layout, but if you want to try it anyway, we recommend using a monitor arm rather than resting the weight on the glass panel. We wouldn't recommend setting it up with the monitor directly on it, especially since tempered glass can shatter without impact and seemingly randomly in some situations from harmonics. With the total monitor arm and monitor configuration, the setup could be made to look pretty unique, and we like the concept like this. Most of our desks here are either 24 inches or 30 inches deep, with a few at 2 cubits for filming. With that old school setup with the computer right in front of the user, the 1.5 cubit deep desks would only have 10 inches or 25 centimeters to spare for a keyboard and mouse, assuming a keyboard no longer than 1.5 IBM Model M's. This table is 0.000762 kilometers deep, but it gives you an idea for sizing. You can definitely build a good-looking retro setup with the right color, lighting, and furniture. Not that the 600 is confined to that style, but it looks good. We just need a deeper table. Back to the fan and LED hubs though. So this case has 2 of them, and so one of those is up top, up there, and then the other one, as we showed earlier, is hidden down here. Now this is the Lightbase 600LX. The LX is because it has 4 fans, and that means that it's already consuming 4 of the slots for each of those, so there's 8 pairs remaining. There's no daisy chain with the fans included in the LX. And this allows for 2 separate zones. Our key focus is performance, but when LEDs are done, we still look for quality. We think the lighting on this is executed excellently. The diffuser bars work well, and the LED animations are smooth. Looks good in a nighttime or lights out setup. Out of the box, all the LEDs are set to Be Quiet orange. The manual provides a full table of built-in lighting effects and instructions for syncing with external input. We thought the manual was well written for this. The cabling for the stock ARGB fans is a little overwhelming, but the light bars and their associated wires are tucked completely out of the way. One complaint we had was that the LED button and the reset button are exactly the same size, and they don't have any labels, so you'd probably only make that mistake once. The Lightbase 600 is another case without a support pillar between its 2 glass panels, giving us a top panel that could theoretically be bent down. In practice, the top and bottom panels are interlocked with the front panel, keeping it solid as long as the case is assembled. The steel side panel is fully ventilated. The only areas that's truly necessary would be where the power supply are and the fans are, but they've got the whole thing ventilated. And then inside it has a removable filter, and we actually like the mechanism for this. Pretty straightforward, but it just basically snaps in and out of place. It's got these sort of notches up here where you can notch it in and back out. So we did like that. This is actually an improvement on some of the competition right now in the more traditional form factor. So, for example, the Haven HS420, which is a case we liked overall, unfortunately has glued its filter in for the side panel, which is obnoxious. Just like, it makes it a lot harder to take it out and clean it. Same goes for some of Height's cases where they have them secured with glue. So this is an improvement for what Be Quiet's doing. Now, unfortunately, the top and bottom filters aren't as flexible, and they're built into their respective panels. If you set up a horizontal build, some fans will be forced to exhaust through a filter that isn't intended to be removed, which just creates unnecessary impedance. Primary radiator support in traditional orientation is at the top and bottom of the case, which both support up to 360mm sizes. 360mm radiators aren't officially supported in the side mount, and most won't fit at all with the 39.6 centimeters of clearance between the top and bottom of the case. The Lightbase 600 does have cutouts though for back connect motherboards, although normal ATX boards overlap with cutouts along the bottom edge. Small fan and I/O cables can be snaked through the back connect holes anyway, but we expect clear, premeditated cable routes. The storage behind the motherboard is deep, as is typical for dual-chamber cases. It's just that it can be difficult to work in once the space is occupied by cables. The cable tie points are hard to reach once power supply cables are in the way. For this particular case, we don't always see that. And the cable cover, the hard drive bracket, and fan and lighting hubs contribute to the cramped feeling. We ended up just sort of wadding all the cables up into the channels and snapping the cable cover shut on top. It's still easier than the LAN Cool 207 I've used. We'd like to see a way to screw the cable cover down, but the cable channel is deep enough that it's unlikely to be necessary. Drive storage is a complicating factor for cable management. The stock Lightbase 600 only supports 2 2.5-inch drives and 1 3.5-inch drive, with 2 smaller drives mounted to the cable cover, which requires leaving enough slack to open it. The stock bottom bracket can only mount a single 3.5-inch drive, but it has room for a Be Quiet HDD Cage 2, which is separate DLC purchasing, that fits an additional 3.5 or 2.5 inch drives. And finally, using the bottom bracket at all reduces access to cable cutouts and one of the 2 fan and lighting hubs. Now the 900 would open some of this up, but again, it's bigger, and probably some of the cramped feeling you get in the back of the case is just because they're trying to make it so when it's on its side, it doesn't feel too ridiculous. Back to some of the fit and finish stuff. So that gap between the 2 glass panes is interesting because it's definitely intentional and definitely known. They shipped the case with a strip of cardboard shoved into that gap. The gaps where the light bars meet, the top and the bottom, definitely aren't intentional, and Be Quiet didn't do anything to really minimize that. Now this is the most brightly lit, attention-grabbing area of the case, and it needs to look perfect. The gaps don't belong on a $195 case the way ours is set up, and the deviation at the top and bottom edges of the glass makes for messy execution where other areas are done to a higher standard. The panel gap isn't great for looks, but it could also contribute to dust ingress. It's that big, especially in a horizontal orientation which would be exposed directly up. We all know how dust collects on glass surfaces. Some smaller points we want Be Quiet to address in future iterations would be the power supply fitment, which is unnecessarily tight to the point where it's harder than necessary getting it installed. Second would be, even though the GPU support works when the case is inverted, it may be weaker since it can't be flipped. So now we get into thermal section. This is the part that I like the most of the case reviews. There are 3 reverse blade fans in here for the model we got stock on the side, and then there's a traditional fan on the back. We have 2 key configurations of the Lightbase 600 that we're testing today. There's stock, which is standing in its traditional orientation with the included fans where they come. There's stock without a side filter, inverted, which is self-evident, flat with the fans left where they were, which becomes bottom intake. For the horizontal case testing, we removed the rubber bumpers in the side panel and we installed the feet in those slots. If we were testing the case without the feet there, and just on the rubber bumpers, then the bottom intake will be completely suffocated and far worse than what you're going to see in our test. And then we also have flat with left intake and right exhaust. We'll start with the chart.
Hi, this is Stu Leonard. Do I have a turkey for you? Stu's Naked Turkeys eat an all-natural feed. Talk about plump and juicy. I guarantee Stu Leonard's turkeys are the best you can buy. Happy Thanksgiving!
Now at Verizon, get iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence on us, for everyone in the family.
With our 160-point inspection, the best new cars make the best used cars. Yours, Toyota. Find yours at toyotacertified.com. Toyota, let's go places.
Weight loss.
For so long,
I felt stuck. But Zepbound means change. Zepbound is for adults with obesity to help lose weight and keep it off. Activating 2 naturally occurring hormone receptors in my body, it works differently.
it's changing what I believe is possible when it comes to weight loss. It's changing how much weight I lose, up to 48 pounds.
And changing what happens. Zepbound should not be used with other tirzepatide-containing or GLP-1 receptor agonist medicines. It is not for children. Don't take it if you're allergic, you or your family have medullary thyroid cancer, or multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2. Stop Zepbound and call your doctor right away if you have an allergic reaction, a lump, or swelling in your neck. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis or severe stomach and gallbladder problems. Tell your doctor of any vision changes or diabetic retinopathy. Taking Zepbound with sulfonylurea or insulin raises low blood sugar risk. Tell your doctor if you are nursing, pregnant, or plan to be. Depression or thoughts of suicide may occur. Tell your doctor if you have any mental changes. Side effects include nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, which can cause dehydration and may cause kidney problems. Zepbound means change.
And when it comes to weight loss,
Change is good.
Discover the weight loss you could be bound for. Talk to your doctor about Zepbound.
Just the Lightbase results make it easy. With all the case fans at full speed, the Lightbase 600LX averaged 48 degrees Celsius above ambient all-core and 52 on the P-cores as default configuration. Removing the optional filter reduced the all-core temperature by 1.7 degrees, which is actually a large drop for a side filter only, relatively restrictive. Fully inverting the case didn't change the temperatures enough to exit margin of error, which is encouraging since, for the most part, it shouldn't. The GPU would be prone to the most change here. Flipping the case on its side definitely hurt CPU thermal performance with an all-core average of 51 and P-core of 55. Left in the stock positions, the three intake fans end up obstructed by the desk surface when the case is put on its side. We intended to fix that with the left intake, right exhaust horizontal configuration, but with a focus on GPU thermals. So CPU thermals didn't change significantly versus the first horizontal result. You can see that here. Flipping the case on its side with the intake fans against the desk surface also raised the noise level up to 32.1 dBA versus 30.9 in the stock or inverted configurations. This is actually noticeable, and it's also really cool because previously our less precise testing approach to acoustics wouldn't have been able to surface this difference in numbers even though you would be able to hear it as a human. That's because we were limited previously by the noise floor and the measurement tools, and now with our hemi-anechoic chamber that the audience has helped us build with store purchases and things like that, Patreon support, we can actually detect with tools what the human ear can already hear, or closer to it anyway. That's why we have this chamber. People often forget that ears are incredible at their job, and that representing it with a microphone is very difficult. So when people ask
That's
why
so
we
cool.
built the chamber, this is exactly the reason. It is an awesome scientific representation of why we wanted it. We get closer to measuring what you can perceive, but can't necessarily explain with numbers using less precise methods. Here's the full chart. It's fitting that Be Quiet's case is among the quietest on the chart when at 100% speed, bracketed by the Height Y60 at 30.1 dBA and the Fractal Pop Air by 31.3, but there are no obvious noise damping features other than use of the Lightwings fans. It all comes down to how many fans they use and how fast they run stock. The Y60 may be equally quiet, but it's also much hotter with just the stock fans, averaging 51 degrees all-core versus the 600LX's 40 degrees. So that is an advantage for the LX. We know based on past experience that the Antec C8 is the dual chamber case to beat in terms of overall thermals. 46 degrees in this particular test for that one, albeit with a higher noise level, 37.1 dBA, while the glass-fronted King 95 Pro averaged 43 degrees at 36.8. We'll get to noise normalized thermals in a moment. GPU full speed is up now. The light-based 600LX kept our GPU at 52 degrees Celsius above ambient with the memory temperature at 60 and the hotspot at 68. Removing the side filter improves temperatures by 2.2 degrees for the GPU, which is a huge climb for just a filter. Be Quiet has room to improve this area. Inversion had a mildly negative effect, raising the GPU average to 54 degrees. The horizontal configuration was worse still at 55 degrees for the GPU, 63 for the memory, and 71 for the hotspot. Keeping the case horizontal but shifting to the left intake right exhaust config dramatically lowered the temperature, down to 41 GPU, 44 memory, and 53 hotspot. This is the equivalent of a bottom intake configuration in a case that's oriented normally, but with unobstructed intake. Here's a competitive chart. All the results with the fans and their stock locations are among the weakest on the chart, with the baseline out-of-the-box result.
North Korean troops are falling like flies.
Hey guys, so today we're talking about power cables.
Let's walk through what a fixed and variable rate reimbursement program is, and how the Modus reimbursement program benefits you. Some of you may know this.
North Korean troops are falling like flies in Kursk. Now, some of you guys might have expected this, because they were trained by Russians for 2 weeks and then sent into the battle against Ukrainians who are fighting for their country, fighting for their existence. But what makes the situation for North Koreans even worse is the fact that they haven't fought a war in 70 plus years, and today's warfare has changed drastically compared to the past. Russians and Ukrainians have developed a sort of an instinct when it comes to defending themselves against drones. They can look out for the noise, they can hide themselves, cover up trenches, just different kind of things they have learned over time to protect or at least increase their chances when fighting against drones. In fact, we actually have our first ever clip of a North Korean fighting against a drone, or I guess meeting a drone, and he doesn't react at all. It's almost like he doesn't know that drones are a threat on the battlefield. So let's break down this clip with none other than former Navy SEAL Chuck Farr. But first, like always, be sure to hit the like button down below. It helps us out tremendously when covering these videos that relate to war that YouTube may not be a big fan of. Let's start. This is Battlefield Breakdown with Chuck Farr, and let's just jump straight into it. First clip, we have a North Korean who seems to be confused what a drone is. Let's watch the clip.
Wow, nice catch. You know, there was going to be a big learning curve for North Vietnamese soldiers coming to Ukraine, or North Korean soldiers, for a lot of reasons. Their institutional battlefield training is based on their experience in combat 70 years ago. They have been in no large-scale ground maneuver combat in 70 years. They don't have any large-scale maneuver combat experience because their entire world is the DMZ, right? It is not. They don't have generals who have a big picture mentality. But here we bring it down to the absolute microcosm here. This soldier squatting in an open field in broad daylight, and he had to hear this drone overhead, because when they're carrying a payload, they make a real grinding, whining sound. And this is the microcosm of why North Korean troops in Ukraine and first they're going to get off to a slow start. And this guy is Mr. Bad Example.
I wonder if the training covered any of this, because from what we heard, the training was just 2 weeks. I know last time we talked about it, it's like that's pretty much nothing when training a soldier, especially someone who hasn't had a war in the country for 70 years.
Right. So these guys are arriving. The Russians assess them both as units and as individuals, and for the most part, they were diverted off to additional training. But I also want to emphasize, you've got troops arriving on the battlefield, and they might as well be deaf and dumb. Everything they're going to do requires a liaison officer and an interpreter. So that's just 2 more links in the chain of command and the kill chain, and things happen very quickly on the battlefield. And just those 2 additional steps, not so good. But this is an example of this particular guy. He didn't get the memo on drones. And in his defense, this wouldn't have mattered if it was night or day. At night they're up against thermals, and it's even harder to hide from thermal. It's not impossible, but you got to be cagey and you need the right gear. And this guy is out of the fight right now.
Let's finish this clip and then we'll move on to the next one.
See, he's looking up now, and he gets it, but a little too late. And I cannot categorically pick this guy out as a North Korean. There are a lot of Asian ethnic groups who are Russians, Boryaks, for example, and there's nothing that stands out on his gear. He has an AK pattern rifle, but you know what? Plausible North Korean? Yes, it is, because a Russian soldier would not likely be out in that field in broad daylight, and God knows what he was doing. But there he is.
Actually, that's what the Russians are using to hide North Koreans too, at least at the beginning, where they were giving them identifications from these Asian regions in Russia.
Absolutely. I did a report for the Kyiv Post on exactly that they have issued these guys with with paperwork indicating they're Russian citizens of Buryak extraction. And again, we do a covert operation, you cover for action, cover for status, and cover for movement. And that would be